Hey guys, welcome to Coding Tutorials Plus, and in this video I'm going to show you how to write your very first C++ program. Now, if you're not at this screen and you don't know how to get to this point, I recommend you watch my previous video and I show you exactly how to get to this point step by step. But if you are at this point, let's get started. Okay, so the very first thing you want to do when making your C++ program is you want to include libraries. Now there's a saying that says, don't recreate the wheel, meaning that if something makes your life simpler, don't try to recreate it all from the beginning and then try to do what you want to do. Take other people's work and work off of it. And as a coder, you'll understand that that is something that almost every coder does, if not every coder that I know. And libraries makes that possible. Libraries are pre-written code that you can piggyback off of to make your program possible. This is in the simplest terms, and we'll go into a deeper definition of exactly what a library consists of. But just for now, just understand at a basic level, a library is code that's pre-written for you so that you can piggyback off of it and make your code easier to write. Okay, so what libraries do we want to include for our very first program? The only library that I include for my very first program is IOStream. Alright, so as you can see, the syntax to write to include a library is pound include and then less than symbol IOStream greater than symbol. And this will include the input-output stream library, which is a library made so that you can use input and output in your program. The next line is using namespace std. Now, std stands for standard, and what we're doing here is we're using a standard namespace, meaning that there's just a certain way that we're going to write our code that is going to be standard throughout our entire code. We'll go into namespaces in more depth later in later videos, but this kind of gives us a little skeleton of how our code should be written. So after we include the namespace, we want to write int main, and then we're going to put parentheses around that afterwards. And then we're going to put curly brackets. Open curly bracket, close curly bracket. And it's going to look something like this. Now, this is probably the most important part of your C++ program, because it is the very first thing that your program goes to is the main. Alright, when I run my program, it goes to the main and then it figures out, okay, exactly what am I doing. So in your main, this is roughly your entire skeleton of your code. You're going to have a main in every C++ program that you write. So just know that this is probably something you should get familiar with. Int main, open parentheses, close parentheses, open curly brackets, close curly brackets. After you write that, you're going to write C out, which stands for console out, because when you're outputting to the console. So C stands for console and out stands for out, and you're going to have two less than symbol signs. Then you're going to have parentheses, two parentheses, and in between these parentheses you're going to write whatever you want to output to your console. So you can write hello world, or you can write an entire sentence. You can write whatever you'd like. So let's say hello world, I'm writing my very first program. Okay, and at the end of the line of code you're going to have a semicolon. Now the semicolon C++ programming is very important because you're going to have it written after almost every line of code. There are certain exceptions, and you'll, with experience, you'll understand where the semicolon goes and where the semicolon doesn't go. But just be familiar with it because it is going to go at the end of almost every line of code in C++ programming. So, as you can see here, I have it after using namespace standard, and I have it after my cout hello world, I'm writing my very first program line of code. But I don't have it after my libraries. So with experience, again, you'll see where the semicolons go and where the semicolons don't go. But just follow along right now exactly where the semicolons go, and your program should work. Okay, so we have our cout hello world, I'm writing my very first program. Now if we were to run this right now, we would have to go to build, okay, and we would click build solution. And as you can see, the shortcut for that is F7. So if you like shortcuts and you want to get familiar with them, you can press F7 on your keyboard and it will build your solution for you as well. Now this is up to date. If you run it for the very first time, it will say 1 succeeded. So if I change my program just a little bit, my very first programs, and then I built it, since it is a different solution entirely, then it succeeds. Now if I were to run it again, instead of succeeding, it would say up to date. Okay, so just know that when you're running it for the very first time, it succeeds. When you're running it twice or 3 times, it should be up to date. And if there's a problem with your program, it will say failed. Build solution, and oh, I guess that's okay. There we go. Build solution, and it will say failed if you have an error in your program. So just know that these are, get familiar with the terms. Succeeded means that you ran it for the first time, there's nothing wrong with your code. Failed means that there's something wrong with your code and you need to check out exactly what's going on. And up to date means that you've already built the solution, but now you're rebuilding it and you're making it up to date. Okay, so we understand those terms. But if I were to build the solution and then I get a success and then I were to click the play button, I'd get a black box, it'd load up, and then it would disappear. So what's going on? I wrote my very first program, it succeeded, but I can't see anything. It just stops. So what's happening here is that your program is running and it's exiting. It's going through and it's printing out hello world, I'm writing my very first program, and then afterwards it has nothing else to do and it exits the program. So we need some way to stop the program so that we can see exactly what's going on inside of the program. Now if I'm using Windows and I've become very familiar with system operations in C++, and if you're running Windows then you should be able to follow along. There are different ways to pause in Linux and in Mac, but I'm not very familiar with those lines of code. So if you're running Windows, then you can follow along. If you're running in a different operating system, I recommend you go on to Google and you find out exactly how to pause your program. In terms of Windows, you can write system, and then in quotes, you're going to write pause. And put a semicolon at the end of that line of code. Now this will pause your program so that you can see exactly what's going on. Now there's only one problem left with this line of code, and you'll see when I run it what it is. It's running, I can see hello world, I'm running my very first program, but it looks kind of weird because the text for the system pause is right next to the text hello world, I'm running my very first program. And what I want to do is I want to write them on different lines so that it looks a little more professional. So I'm going to exit out of the program, and at the end of the line of code where it says "See out, hello world, I'm writing my very first program," I'm going to put two less than symbols, and I'm going to put in ENDL. Now what this stands for is end line. So what this is saying is, okay, we're going to output to the console. What we're going to output is "Hello world, I'm writing my very first program." Afterwards, I'm going to tell the console that that's the end of the line. I don't want anything else written on that line. I want you to go to the next line, and whatever there is to print next, you will print that on the new line. So if we run the program again, we'll see that "Hello world, I'm writing my very first program" is on one line. It ends the line, goes to the next line, and then it prints "Press any key to continue." I'll press enter, and my program will end. Now it's very useful to get into the habit to return in a function, and the main is a function. So we have this very I would say tradition to put return 0 at the end of your main function. This helps you to get into the tradition of, or to the habit of returning something in a function, and you will understand exactly what a return function is later on. But just know that at the end of the main, you usually have return 0, and this completes your program, from 0 to 100%. And this is your very first program. So if we were to run it again, you would see that I'd have to rebuild it because I changed code. But you'd see that it says "Hello world, I'm writing my very first program, press any key to continue." And that return 0 is kind of a tradition to get you into the habit of returning values at the end of a function, because int main is a function, and we'll go into greater depths of exactly what a function is. But not to overwhelm you for your very first video, I want you to know that you have written your very first program, and it's that simple. And I hope to see you in the next video, and as always, I'll see you on the plus side. Thank you for watching.